And what had happened for me was I came here and I had nothing. And I was crashing with people, and then I bought a car for $100 and I slept in my car even at some point, and was schlepping my drums around and in no cases.
Oh
and
my gosh.
At that time there were a lot of clubs. A lot
of places to perform and listen. Yes.
Yeah, and so I would just find out where they were and just kind of go show up and meet people and listen to the music. Maybe occasionally someone would say, well, why don't you sit in? And I'd sit in, and then I'd meet someone else and go and sit in, and then I'd meet someone else and they'd say, hey, we've got a gig. But I mean, they weren't big money gigs. So I was playing gigs for very little money, but I was meeting people. And probably 3 or 4 months after being here, and I struggled quite a bit. I somehow was playing at this club in Venice. It doesn't exist anymore. It was called the Comeback Inn. And I was playing with the Fowler brothers, who are an exceptionally talented musical family.
Absolutely.
And as it turned out, Tom, the bass player, we're playing at this club, and he just turned to me and said, hey, I was talking to Dookie today, and he was speaking of the late, great George Duke. Yeah. And he said, he told me Zapp's looking for a rhythm section. Zapp meant Frank Zappa.
Absolutely.
And I went, really? And I said, how can I find out about this? I'll give you the management's number. Okay. So I started calling them up. And it was like the typical go away kid. Who are you? Go away. I kept calling them. But somehow on one of the phone calls, they must have asked me for a phone number. So I gave them a phone number where I was staying. And at that time, and I'm dating myself now, there were no answering machines.
Right.
This is pre-answering machine. Wired landline. If you're home, great. If you're not,
you miss
oh
it.
well.
That's it, yeah.
So I happened to be home one day, or at this place that I was crashing at, listening to the Zappa record. And I had my drums set up, and I was playing, and I heard the phone ring. And I went and picked it up. I went, hello? Yes, Mr. Zappa will hear you Tuesday night at Culver City Studios. Show up at 7 o'clock, whatever. Click. I went, wow. I had to get a ride down there, I think. I showed up. It was a cattle call. 3 lines, at least 150 deep, on different instruments. And there I was in this huge soundstage that was like an airplane hangar. Yeah. And I stood in line, and I saw people go up there one after the other, and it was kind of brutal. One guy went up and started playing the guitar, and in 15 seconds, he got on the mic and said, next. Oh, man, and it was like, next, next, next. And so I'm getting closer to the front of the line, and now I'm starting to sweat, and it was literally like, and then I just went, okay, sink or swim. Here we go.
You dove in.
Terry Bozzio's double bass, think they were black, Gretsch kit was there.
Probably black, yeah.
I had never played double bass drums. So I just sat down behind his drums, and I thought, and I started playing, and then it was like a laundry list of categorical things. Like, okay, let's test your memory, phrase retention. Spit this back at me. Okay, now I want you to play in 21. Okay, now solo in 19. Okay, now we're going to test your sight reading, And then he put the black page down, and I looked away and started playing it from memory as he was putting it on the page. And he thought, oh, you think you're a smart aleck. He takes it off, puts something called Pedro's Dowry down, which was this long orchestral piece, and said, 3, 4, and I had to play it in unison with Ed Mann. So I'm trying to read this thing, and I'm reading it, and maybe in 10 seconds, 15 seconds goes by, and he picks it up and goes, yes, you can read. Okay, next. And so at this point, I'm thinking, I actually thought, I must have been up here about a minute already. Wow. And then he just stopped and said, come over here. Pulled me to the side of the stage, and in his almost exact words, he looked at me very deadpan and said, I'd be amazed right now if anybody could come up here and cut you. But out of respect, I have to listen to a few more people. Can you please go and wait over there? And I went, okay. And I stood in this little holding area, and Ike Willis was over there and said to me, did he ask you to wait too? And I said, yeah. And then about 5 minutes later, well, maybe 15 minutes later, the manager comes over to us and says, oh, well, Mr. Zappa would like to hire you. When can you start?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, now. And I ended up going to Spago that night with him, and he picked me up with his driver in a Rolls Royce.
Oh my Lord.
And took me to Spago, then took me to his house and introduced me to his wife and said, I'd like you to meet the new drummer. And it was this whirlwind from that point on, a whirlwind.
Yeah.
The whole thing was like, Comedy Central meets Juilliard meets boot camp for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was just like a tornado. And so after that, I got the opportunity to do 2 records at the same time in Los Angeles. And we were rehearsing for a tour in early 1981 in the spring. And I said to Frank, Frank, I have a great...